Good afternoon. Thank you for coming to Doctor Who and the Key of Scrum. Now, before we get going, I thought I would better explain a couple of things up front, like, what the hell's Doctor Who? Now, can I get a quick show of hands? Are you aware of the concept of Doctor Who? Show of hands. Anyone here not aware of the concept of Doctor Who? If you're not aware, I'll quickly tell you, British science fiction programme, produced since 1963, with a little hiatus in the 90s, but we don't like to talk about that. About the adventures of a Time Lord called the Doctor, who's an extraterrestrial from the planet Gallifrey. Now, the Doctor explores the universe in a time-travelling spaceship called the TARDIS. Now, his TARDIS has alas been locked as a police phone box for the last 50 or so odd years. Now, who am I? Well, I tell you what, I'm dressed like the Doctor, right? And I'm not quite sure why I've done this. Okay? It's very hot, it costs a little bit too much money off the internet, right? And I'm not actually, I think, technically playing the Doctor in this presentation. This is me, I'm Nigel Baker, okay? Well, I'm an Agile coach and certified Scrum trainer since at least 2007. I've been travelling the world coaching, training, consulting for about 15 years now, helping people transform their own little worlds of Scrum. I come from Bristol, just over the bridge, and I've worked with some cool companies and many big companies. And what the aim of this presentation, okay, is to help the mission of this presentation is to travel through time and space and discover the key to... Sorry to interrupt, Nigel, but I thought I'd better. I've travelled back in time to give you some advice. Wow, what? You're going to leave the key to Scrum till the end. Yeah. And that's not a good idea. They'd have worked it out by then and got a bit bored. So you should tell them now. The key to Scrum is time. The key to Scrum is time. There we go. Oh, hang on a sec. My presentation's finishing up. I better get back. Catch you later. Okay. The key to Scrum is time. Well, I guess we're done there. No, okay. The key to Scrum. What is the key to Scrum, you know? I think it's as George Tannhäuser says, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And I can't remember the past, so what's the key to Scrum? Well, do you know what? Let's use my TARDIS. Okay, so TARDIS in the TV show, police box. But actually, if you've ever seen a TV show, supposedly that thing's supposed to be able to turn into other things, right? So luckily Fran here, my companion, who we travel with, has brought the TARDIS, which is this board. So it doesn't just as straight as 21st century TARDIS. Who knows what a police box is these days? So we're going to travel back in time to the Agile Corporation in 1993. There we go. Imagine your own TARDIS sound effect. In the Agile Corporation in 1993. Does anyone know what happened here? This is supposedly where Scrum was born. The Agile Corporation in 1993, this is the actual picture of that building in 1993. This is where the Agile Corporation invented Scrum. Specifically, a man called Jeff Sutherland is often proclaimed as the inventor of Scrum. He invented this framework that a lot of us use in a half-assed fashion. And some of you may know, with a bit more experience, you may know, actually, Nigel, that's not the whole truth. You know, Sutherland didn't strictly invent it on his own. He actually read a paper from about 1986 in Japan. Here's us in 1986 in Japan. Imagine your TARDIS sound effect. He actually read this paper here by two Japanese professors, Taguchi and Nanaka. And they wrote this in the mid-80s, the new product development game, about how some Japanese companies were successfully delivering and designing and developing new products for market, and some weren't, and what differentiated the two. So the story always goes that Jeff Sutherland read this paper, this new product development game paper, and implemented it in software in the early 90s. But that's not the whole story. So if we look forward, so Scrum itself, you know, so we say, oh, Jeff Sutherland, he took this paper and he implemented it in Scrum. Well, that's not strictly true. If you read this quote by Mike Beadle, who's passed away, heaven, love you Mike, with modern Scrum, Jeff attempted to build a subsumption architecture, let's not go there now, using organisational patterns, okay, mainly from a guy called Jim Copeland at Bell Labs, right? So taking this guy's work on organisational patterns and combined it with some stuff from Takeuchi and Anaka and implemented Scrum. So it's interesting to know some things get missed out of the histories of this stuff. If you know the past, maybe we won't repeat it. So for me, if you take one thing from this session, go and look at some of those organisational patterns. They're well published. Jim Copeland wrote a book, I think it's called Organisational Patterns or something like that, covering a lot of these patterns that Scrum is based on. If you go to a website called Scrum Plop, I apologise for the name. I once laughed about it on the Scrum Trainer forum and got told off. This is very serious, Nigel. Don't make jokes about plop. Couldn't help myself. It's something like pattern language of patterns or something like this. But it's a website with a collection of success patterns, agile performance patterns, patterns to help your Scrum, your agile implementation maybe be a bit better. And it's something that's often overlooked by a lot of us. So this is a really interesting area to delve into. Now, anyone here read Jeff Sutherland's book, Doing Half the Stuff in Twice the Stuff? I can't remember the exact title, but in his book he talks about OODA. Have you ever heard of this? Something from the history of Scrum. Observe, orient, decide, act. Yes, that's it. This is a fighter pilot technique that Sutherland talks about a lot. He says about how he was historically a fighter pilot, I believe, in the Vietnam War, and they were taught this model by John Boyd, this model to help dogfight in appropriate circumstances, and how a lot of that he put into Scrum, a lot of that thinking he put into Scrum. If you look here, for instance, it looks quite similar to a Scrum framework. If you look at it, you know, some sort of input, some multiple feeds into something, then you make some decisions, then you decide, then you act, and you feedback. It looks very similar to Scrum. How interesting. It's just good to know, diversity was spoken about earlier on. It's good to know these diverse things of coming from different industries into our Scrum world. Except, when I was researching this presentation, I looked into some of this OODA stuff and Sutherland's writing about it. And it only really, as far as I can tell, maybe you can research better, but as far as I can tell, it only really popped up in the literature in about 2007, which is a good 15 or so years since the birth of Scrum. I thought it was a little interesting. So, I'm not saying it wasn't an influence on Scrum, but perhaps it wasn't as a deliberate influence as some people are now presenting. You know, we've got to be a little bit careful here. There's a line in a film, I can't remember the film, I just realised, when you have the option to print the truth or the legend, print the legend. And I get a little bit worried about that, because let's look a little bit, things ain't what they used to be in Scrum. So when Scrum first came out, there was no concept of the retrospective in it, really. You know, that appeared around 2004-ish. Ken Schwaber put it into Scrum, but the parents of it are generally regarded as Esther Darby and Boris Glogger. And they both claim to be the people who introduced retrospectives into the Agile experience. But it looks, I think it's probably more Esther than Boris, but hey-ho. But they introduced it to the concept. It wasn't always there. It was kind of the last big thing that was added to Scrum. There's some other stuff, you know, sprint lengths. How long are your sprints? Who's scrumming here at the moment? Not actually at this moment, because you're in a room, but who's scrumming? How long are your sprints? Shout them out to me. 2 weeks at the back. 3 weeks. 5 days. Any higher, lower, stick. I've become Bruce Forsyth, I apologise. But they always used to be 30 calendar days. Did you know that? Sprints were 30 calendar days. You could have any length sprint you like, as long as it was 30 calendar days. And that was like the law, it was written down on paper, your sprints are 30 days, this is the mythology, the methodology, the approach of Scrum. Do you know why sprints were 30 calendar days? So I was in San Diego, I think, 18 months ago, 2 years ago now, I can't remember exactly how long ago it was. And Jeff McKenna, who's a Scrum trainer, was on the first Scrum team, started giving some interesting tidbits on the history of Scrum. And he said, well, he was regarded as, some people call him the first Scrum Master. He says he was not the first Scrum Master. He says he was the first sort of team coach. Actually, if you look at what he did in that first team in Easel, he was pretty much a product owner in reality. Okay? And he said the reason they had 30-day sprints is because he came into the office every 30 days to see what they had done. And so it's interesting, a practice that worked for them was turned into a mythology that became enforced in a lot of companies. And it took years for that to break, first to become 2, 3, 4 week cycles. Sprints itself, do you know why sprints are called sprints? It's a joke. This is another thing McKenna said. He said, you know what? The sprints came off the team basically joking about RAD, rapid application development. They said, I think it was John Scumnilatis, I think the first Scrum Master, who said, hey, those RAD guys are rapid. Why don't we be a bit better? Yeah, we'll sprint. Think of the amount of people who have died on the hill of the term sprint. I don't mind it, but a lot of people seem to think it's like a boss saying to you, you will sprint. Which is very different to a team saying, hey, we will sprint, we will try hard, we'll put some effort in. So interesting to see, again, a joke becomes formal. The title Scrum Master. Allegedly, that comes from Webmaster, derived from Webmaster. Again, a bit of a pun. If you remember the Webmaster roles in the late 90s, really cool job. Oh, I'm a Webmaster. What do you do? Web. You know, so it died off after 18 months. Scrum Master has stuck around. But supposedly the history of Scrum Master isn't Ringmaster, as some people say, but it's actually from Webmaster. The Webmaster looked after the web. So the Scrum Master looked after the Scrum. Now, by the way, the quick thing about this. So I went looking online, right, as you do, on Google Images, typing away. I said Scrum Master, sorry, logo, or Scrum Master icon. I just wanted a quick, sharp icon as a background image. And this was the first, 15 pictures that came up on Google. And they're all shockingly terrible. Right? If I didn't want you to understand Scrum, or wanted you to do it badly, I would show you these 15 images. Scrum Master as superhero. Scrum Master as faceless white man. Scrum Master as faceless white man in a suit. Scrum Master as what? Lord from the 19th century? Scrum Master as a king. Scrum Master as a queen. Scrum Master as someone who multitasks loads of stuff at once. Don't do that. Scrum Master as a director with a mic. Don't do that. Scrum Master as a teacher? No. Scrum Master as like a rugby playing lecturer? Pardon my language, but that Scrum Master was fucking Raiden from Mortal Kombat. I have electricity, I will burn you. It's like, ah. So generally, if you avoid all those things, I think you'd be a pretty good Scrum Master actually. What else is there? Oh yeah, things ain't what they used to be. So someone said, I think it was Dan said earlier on about daily Scrum, daily stand-up, what's the difference? Well, you do know, back at the start of Scrum, you didn't have to stand up. In the very first Scrum book that came out by Ken and Mike, they talk about the Scrum Master getting enough chairs in the room so you can have a sit down, right? So for me, I call them daily Scrums. Why? Because, you know what? There's a little secret here. I don't care if you stand up or not. If it helps, that's great. But frankly, if you're going to stand up in some sort of agile event, I would like you to stand up in sprint planning or something like that. That would speed the meeting up a little bit, wouldn't it? Yeah? Get the chairs out of the room and a whiteboard rather than 15 chairs, Jira, and 4,000 tons of apathy. You know? No, genuinely, anyone here using Jira? Anyone using Jira? Stop! Thank you. So, not my doctor told you. Stop, it's rubbish. So get enough chairs around it. In fact, the daily Scrum is probably the second to last thing that was added to Scrum. So supposedly, Jeff Sutherland read some of Jim Coplin's work at the Bell Labs, and they were having a daily meeting in the Ball and Quattro Pro team, which is what Coplin was studying. And that Quattro Pro team was supposedly one of the highest performing teams ever recorded. So they saw this pattern they were having, this daily meeting, and Sutherland said, I'll have me some of that. And they institutionalized it in their first Scrum team at Easel. Do you know how long the Quattro Pro's daily meeting was? Sorry? An hour? That would be devastating, wouldn't it? Be awful, an hour. Allegedly it was hours. Remember that next time you're moaning about a 20-minute Scrum. What else are we going? Oh yeah, oh of course. Oh, well, the thing I love about Scrum most is the product backlog containing sync steps and packages. You're using syncs. Who uses sync steps in their backlog? Anyone using user stories in their backlog? Anyone abusing user stories in their backlog? Everybody is. But if you look back at some of the early work of Scrum in the olden days, Jeff talks about sync steps and packages and packets. And as far as I can tell, these are a mealy-mouthed mix of what we would call these days stories or backlog items and tasks. So there's no clear distinction between them two. They're a little bit weaselly, a little bit vague, a little bit of a crossover between the technology business aspects of the work. So you can see some things have fallen out of Scrum over the years. They literally disappeared. They've gone extinct. Of course, you all love your planning and closing sprints, don't you? Your lovely planning and closing sprints, your planning sprints, then you deliver, then you have release sprints. We all love that, don't we? No. But that's in some of the early literature. So just remember, when you think oh God, this thing's about having a hardening sprint, some people in the early literature had hardening sprints and then decided they all hated it and stopped doing it. But it's interesting to know, Scrum didn't emerge perfectly formed like some ideal. It emerged through practice, and some of those practices were a bit naff and were eliminated or reduced or rendered extinct. Oh, different types of sprint. Are you aware of type A, B, and C sprints? This comes from Taguchi and Naka's original work, actually, in that new product development game. They talk of different types of cycles, the very distinct cycles, the overlapping cycles, and the all-in-one cycles, which, as far as I can tell, is like some sort of waterfall death march. But so when Schwaber got involved in Scrum, he very much told us, no, it's all about this. It's all about separate sprints, no overlapping work. Separate sprints, start it, get it done, do it, start it, get it done, do it. How nice, you know. The idea of type A, B, and C sprints fell away. What's the most common type of sprint today? Start, stop, start again. I have a feeling that nearly every sprint out there is actually type B sprints. What makes sprints type B sprints?
Splitting stories.
Splitting stories? And what's that commonly referred to? I think of splitting stories as we go along, getting our stories into a good shape for the next sprint. Backlog, refinement, thank you. What's the term we don't use for that anymore? Exactly, because we're not. Yeah. Again, be careful, some Americans still use that term because it doesn't have a negative meaning in America like it does over here. So just, if anyone uses the G word, stop that right away. But the idea is, for me, most sprints are type B sprints, actually. We're doing this refinement as we go along, we're getting the next sprint ready a little bit before the previous one. So even though the battle was won and it was type A, in reality, most of it was actually type B. How interesting, that's evolved. That wasn't a conscious choice, really. That's evolved over time through people's experience. What else? Oh yeah, of course, there's Jeff Sutherland's most famous quote. One of the most interesting effects of Scrum on Easel's development environment was an observed punctuated equilibrium effect. This occurs in biological evolution, when a species is stable for long periods of time, then undergoes a sudden jumping capability. During that long period of apparent stability, many internal changes in the organism are reconfigured that cannot be observed externally. When all the pieces are in place to allow a significant jump in functionality, external change occurs suddenly. A fully integrated component design environment leads to unexpected rapid evolution of a software system with emergent adaptive qualities or properties, resembling the process of punctuated equilibrium observed in a biological species. Sudden leaps in functionality resulted in earlier than expected delivery of software in the first Scrum. Could someone translate that for me? What's he actually saying there? We had really big stories, basically. Yeah, you couldn't see anything for ages, then a massive lump of work appeared. Ta-da! Yeah, so you can wrap some things in words, but in the end, stories are too big. Right back at the start. So, things just aren't what they used to be. That's the point I'm trying to get. In the past, you know, people used to talk about committing to sprints, and then bosses would just hold teams' feet to the fire to get all their stories done, so we changed the word to forecast. You know, part 1 and part 2 in sprint planning. Why did that used to exist? It used to exist because a lot of business partners were psychopaths and would like just abuse you. So you would get them in a room for a little bit, get some feedback, then kick them out of the room and have an honest chat. The one thing I've seen in the last 15 years, which has been amazing, has been the joining together of those two worlds. We all live in the technology world these days. IT isn't in the basement anymore, it's in the boardroom. And so we're seeing that actually through Scrum and how Scrum has changed as the product owners become more and more involved, become more an integral part of the team. When we started 20 odd years ago, they very much were an isolated outside individual. Now they're part integrated in the experience. How cool is that? So, then we journey forward to 18th of August 2009. Does anyone know what happened on the 18th of August 2009? Beyond this rocket was launched from Cape Canaveral, which is the only significant thing we could find happened on this date. And, I don't want to astonish you all, but a great invention was created. On the 18th of August 2009, I created the Nigel scale. Have any of you here heard of the Nigel scale before? One of the most, by the way, this is my scale, not your scale. Okay, so you may borrow it if you want, that's fine, but it's mine, not yours. I'm watching you, it's mine, right? If I see it with your name on it, stop it, it's my scale, it's Nigel scale, it's my scale, I own it, it's mine, right? So I invented the Nigel scale in 2009 because us Scrum trainers were having an argument. We were having a bicker on our online forum. We were bickering with each other over stuff you would never possibly care about. Loads of technical minutiae of Scrum, and like what is Scrum, what isn't Scrum. It's right before the Scrum Guide really appeared. And I came up with the Nigel scale. I said, everyone, you must be following the Nigel scale. I've been using it for years. I made it up that exact second. And I said, the Nigel scale is a very simple scale, breaks down to 3 points. We have a Nigel scale 1. This is like core Scrum. The fundamentals of Scrum. We would now call it Scrum Guide-tastic, because that bloody Scrum Guide document. So these are the fundamental laws of Scrum. Bend them at your peril. You may get into trouble if you do. Great stuff. Though I have to say, next week I'm going to be launching the guide. This is a brief document covering how to write a good guide. There won't be enough details. It'll be misunderstood, and some of you will treat it like a Bible. But either way, that's how I feel about guides. But there's the fundamental rules of Scrum. And this is stuff that if you bend it, you can bend anything you want, by the way. I'm not going to stop you. But that stuff, if you bend it, you tend to get into a bit of trouble. Then there's Nigel Scale 2, which is pink. Stuff that Scrum doesn't officially care about. Okay, so this is stuff like the grey area of good practice. You know, the idea is to use your previous experience, right, to help coach organisations to self-organise their own answers to their own complex problems. This is the world of, some people used to call it best practice, but over the years I think we've discovered there's very few best practices in the complex world of product development, but there's lots of good practices. Some of them may work for you, and some of them may not. This is where we've got some wobble, and we should be aware we've got some wobble when we're doing this stuff in work. And then Nigel Scale 3 is, oh, I forgot this, by the way, yeah. Do you know a lot of Scrum isn't Scrum? I forgot that, by the way. You know, I used the stories you mentioned earlier on. Not Scrum. Visioning, not Scrum. What else is not Scrum? Velocity. Who's using velocity? Who's getting abused by velocity? Yeah, it's not Scrum. Story points. Yeah, not Scrum. Visioning even, not Scrum. Burn down charts, not Scrum for a decade. Standing up. You don't have to bloody stand up. Task boards, sprint zero, release planning. This is all stuff that just isn't Scrum. You can do it if you want. I don't mind. Some of it I quite like. But never confuse a good practice with a core practice. Because good practices are where you've got some flexibility depending on conditions, and core practices when you get into a bit of trouble if you flex them. It's well worth being aware of the two. And the third is bad practices. The bad stuff. Not agile, the stuff we need to avoid, the anti-patterns or negative behaviours that lead us down dark paths. Has anyone got any anti-patterns they can tell me? Give me some anti-patterns. In your work today, bad stuff.
Velocity trap.
Sorry?
You touched on before, velocity trap.
Velocity used as some sort of like whip or something, yeah?
Yeah, public. Just using
Abused, what else?
Changing sprint lengths because you didn't finish the work.
Oh God.
2 weeks and then 3
yeah, well, I had a
weeks.
couple of days on. I know the days we'll add Saturday and Sunday. What else?
Mapping points to days. Or
Mapping points to days. Yes, abstract our delivery system so we don't track our developers too heavily and treat them like scum, and then we'll treat them like scum. Like, yeah.
Gantt charts.
Gantt charts? Well, no, I don't hate a Gantt chart, but it could be used poorly.
inflexibility.
Inflexibility. The joke about Agile is many people aren't Agile with Agile. You know, I mean, I tweeted, I Facebook, not Facebook, LinkedIn. I said many Agile coaches aren't. They're not Agile, they're not coaches. And oh dear, did I get some serious rockets thrown at me for that. I don't want to throw anything under the bus particularly. Jira! Who's using Jira? So are you still using Jira? I told you to stop earlier on. Stop it. No, but generally Jira's not evil, but like an Uzi isn't evil, so I wouldn't give it to my kids, you know. There's some stuff that just does bad stuff, and we've got to be very careful and be quite ruthless with that. So I often get told off for being like a fundamentalist or something, and I'm not a fundamentalist, except about bad stuff. Because I want my doctor to be fundamentalist about washing their hands. You know? I want my doctor to be fundamentalist about, you know, not giving me the wrong drugs. Yet some of this stuff we've got some flexibility. So now let's go to the present-ish. So back in our TARDIS, we're in the well, this is actually, where's this? What happened here a couple of years ago? Agile Cymru, yeah. Anyone come to my Agile Cymru thing a couple of years ago? Yeah, some of this stuff's a bit familiar, sorry. But a couple of years ago I did Scrum patterns, tactics, pivots and widgets. Okay? It was like a 90-minute session. I did warn people that it could cause severe overthinking, boredom, stress, obesity, diabetes, epilepsy, measles, smallpox and even more serious conditions such as the bubonic plague, but probably boredom. And it turned out it was really bloody boring. And I apologise for you, failure valve, you had to come to it. But I got really obsessed at the time, a couple of years ago, about good practices. And about understanding there are deliberate holes in Scrum, you know, deliberate gaps in Scrum for you to put your own good practices into, for you to take and inspect and adapt, and there's bits of Scrum that are quite stiff. Now, it was a bit boring, I did get a little bit carried away with it, I do apologise. And so what I thought I'll do today, here, in the present, there we go, a bit darker out there, bloody photo online, is revisit that subject. Hey! No, the main thing I want to talk to you about today is about good practices and the life cycle of good practices. Because we all talk about these practices that we do, these good practices. Oh, it worked for me in a previous job, it'll work for me in the next job. But actually, people don't take into account there's an extra aspect to all this, which is basically time. That Nigel scale has the element of time in it, which I haven't taken into account. Yes, that practice is good for you today. It may not mean it's good for you in 6 or 9 months' time. That practice is bad for you today. If you do that practice in work today, you will get fired. But over time, work may evolve to using that practice, and it may be suitable for your context. So it's not like a 1-0 thing, do it or don't do it. It's actually understanding the time on this stuff. When should we launch this stuff? When should we give birth to these ideas? How long should they live for? Should they die? So let's look at some classic Scrummy NS2 stuff. Planning poker. So, when do people start doing something like planning poker? Often we'll do it from day one. They're taught it in something like a Scrum course, like people like me teach it. So we teach it in our certified courses. But here's a good way of getting going. And some people get going with it and they go, oh wow, this really helps. My developers never used to talk to each other. Now they are playing cards with each other and talking to each other. And now they're disagreeing where they never used to disagree. Right? But what some people find is the life cycle on it is months, not years. So actually, start doing it, and it really helps, maybe get the ball rolling, but after some months, people are like, okay, well, we're spending a lot of time here, you know, waving cards around. I'm not too sure the benefit we're getting from this. Just remember, the person who allegedly invented planning poker, I think it's James Grenning. No, he didn't actually, he took the idea from Barry Bowen, from Spiral, back in the 80s, but anyway, James Grenning is regarded in the Agile space as the man who invented it. When they first did it in their team, they did it for weeks, and then found better ways of estimating their work. So it was a great way to get the ball rolling, but it was a way to get the ball rolling. In fact, some of you in this room, some of the Kanbaners, some of the more experienced Agile people, when I said the words planning poker, you kind of went like, you know, waving cards around, we should be trying cycle time and measuring it and dividing the number by the first number we thought of. And so, just be aware, there's a bit of a journey on this stuff. You know, it could be a good practice for you today, but it may decay. It probably will decay. And you need to be aware of that as teams, because all of a sudden it may start giving the value it used to give. A lot of investment without much return. Or look at something like engineering tasks. Again, this is really interesting, engineering tasks. We always used to do this. When I started Scrumming, we broke our work down to engineering work into quite small lumps. And that's what you did. It's in fact part of the Scrum law. was break your work down small so you got some idea what you're doing. And then over time, that's actually, Scrum's changed. Scrum's become more agnostic to it. So, you know what, you can break your work down in detail if you want, it helps, but you don't have to. And the reason why is, a lot of us became more sophisticated at this stuff. If you think about when I started Scrumming, what, 2003, 2004, and everyone was a bit half-assed at this. And so we all needed those training wheels to get going. But now people have been Scrumming for 10, 15 years in a team, let's say the same team. They don't necessarily need to break the work down the same way every time. Why would they? They've done it 15 years. They know their onions. Breaking the work down to lots of details is a waste for them. That's the important word though. It's a waste for them. It doesn't mean it's a waste for you, and it doesn't mean it's a waste for your next team. See, it's because of the 3D thing. You know, yeah, it could be good for you today, not to task. We don't do tasks, we just work on small stories. And I say, good for you, I love that too. But with a new team, that may not be the best place to start. They may need that breakdown to help them get going and then optimize away from it. So it's not right or wrong, it's a journey. It's a bit of a three-dimensional journey. A bit of a journey the team goes on to discover that need and to eliminate that work. Time is a factor. Refinement, oh bloody hell, this is an hour on its own. I'm sweating like a dog already. You know, refinement, you can spend an hour on refinement, backlog refinement, 1,000 different ways, 1,000 different good ways, 1,000 different bad ways. You know, there's loads of ways to this. Teams transition through different styles. If you think of yourselves as a Scrum team, who's been Scrumming more than a couple of years in their team? Anyone? So think of the different ways you've broken backlog items down by. Can anyone give me some examples of ways they've refined their backlog? Yeah, so do some investigation and build on that. What else?
Story mapping.
Story mapping, one way. Anyone have a big meeting, like a backlog refinement meeting? Singular, not plural. Show of hands if you had a singular one a sprint. All of us together, one a sprint. Only one will survive. Then people go, oh, we'll have backlog refinement meetings. Anyone here have a few meetings a sprint? Get together. Anyone here do the Three Amigos type stuff, like get it more frequently? Anyone do it ad hoc? You know, the idea of just in time, just enough. There's loads of different ways, which is right, which is wrong. It's a bit of a journey, probably. Now, you could jump, you go from one way, and then go, right, we'll change it to a new method. I think that's what Jess Sutherland called a punctuated equilibrium, you know. Or you could, like, evolve your own processes gradually. I don't mind, both legitimate. But it's being aware there's no one-size-fits-all. I hear a lot of people talking about when is refinement going to be added to Scrum. Yeah? Well, it's so variable. How would you add it? You know, it's 1,000 different ways of skinning that proverbial cat. Retrospectives. So we spoke about how retrospectives were added to Scrum about 15 years ago. Great core Agile thing. If I did one thing in the Agile world, I'll probably reflect. Just understand, the implementation is actually where people have flexibility. And it's where a lot of people don't flex. They'll do the same retrospective again and again and again. And retrospectives age like milk. Okay? Think about milk in your fridge, how good it is up until the use-by date. And then, nicht sehr gut. I see teams doing the same retro. What did we do yesterday? What did we not do? What did I do last sprint? What am I going to do next sprint? No. You know, what went well? What didn't go so well? What confuses me? They have the same formulas again and again and again, and they just get the same things come up again and again and again. There's no creativity, there's no diversity, there's no empowerment, there's no engagement, there's no novelty. And so you've got to be aware of this. So, though the method is, yeah, we're going to keep rocking this forever, the implementation of it is where we have flex and where we should flex a lot. So it's understanding that idea of core and good practice is even more flexible than a lump of Scrum. It's different flavours depending on the style of Scrum. And organisations, Jesus Christ. The changing organisation over the changed organisation. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm not talking about agile transformations here, but most of you know the concept of an agile transformation is a bit naff anyway, because like, it's got to sort of emanate. And the entire point of being an agile organisation is being an agile organisation. It's being flexible, it's being reflective. You're not changing, you're not becoming a Scrum business, you're becoming an agile business. But even if you're not, businesses change. And that concept of how businesses change is a struggle for a lot of businesses. A lot of businesses, imagine applying the Nigel scale to your organisational structure. Which bits of our organisation are core, which bits are good practice, and which bits are bad practice. Because I often see with organisational changes, people sort of go, right, this is fundamental, this is core, you must follow process X. And the business changes, and they go, process X is evil. You must follow process Y now. We have always been at war with Eurasia. You know, it's like this mentality of like 1 or 0, 1 or 3, not understanding that a lot of your organisation, 90% of your organisational structure is probably good practice or something like that. It should be flexible, it should be variable, there should be some ability to adapt there. It shouldn't be one size fits all across your entire thing. We're getting far beyond Agile and Scrum now, just into the core concepts of your business. I don't know what an Agile organisation looks like. I've travelled all over the world. Am I the doctor or am I Nigel? I can't remember. But if I was the doctor, I would say I've travelled all over the world through time and space. And I don't know what one bloody looks like, you know. Is an Agile organisation an adaptive one regarding methods, like an organisation that's flexible? Is an Agile organisation upper Agile, upper A, you know, or they've got all the processes in place? But what do you mean all in place? You know, how far? You know, so if I say we've got an Agile business, does that mean Agile into HR, into auditing, into the call centres, where it may be completely inappropriate? Does that mean we're 51% Agile, you know, or 52% Agile? We've had a referendum on agility in the company. We're 52%, so we are officially all Agile. I think you'll find there's quite a lot of people who aren't, and have a good experience, you know. Or is it about, you know, companies that are humane? Respectful. They may not have models and Scrum and frameworks, but they show respect and love and admiration and treat you like a professional. Their company may not be like a snake. Maybe it's just like a really cool, nice place to work. Is that Agile? You know? Now, I know what I would like, but you have to think about what you would like. I think when we talk about Agile organisations, a lot of people don't have any idea where they're heading with that concept anyway. And so how could you get there if you have no idea what it actually looks like to you? Scrum Masters and time. This is a key one. Scrum Masters and time. You know, I mean, many Scrum Masters, many Agile coaches actually, but let's not go there right now. Many Scrum Masters who, because of inexperience, of lack of miles under their feet, adopt inappropriate stances in work. So you've probably heard of coaching stances. There's loads of different names for it. I don't want to get too much into it now. I picked these 3 names because they're all C's, and I like things like alliteration. But the idea is consult stance is kind of like I'm telling you. So a product backlog is this. Collaborate stance is like 2 of us working together. Hey Paul, should we build that new game? A coaching stance is, well, coaching is okay. So what do you think about that? What benefits could you imagine? What drawbacks could occur? And I mean many Scrum Masters who only have the consult stance in their repertoire. So they just tell. And if it doesn't work, they tell louder. And if it doesn't work, they tell the person's boss to say they're not Agile. They're not listening. They haven't done their product backlogging correctly, so you should do something about that. They're not backlogging right. And it's just inappropriate, you know. There's many ways of skinning a cat. As a Scrum Master, you know what, it doesn't matter if you're a Scrum Master. If you're an Agile person, there are many ways of engaging with your colleagues. Pairing. We paired as developers. I could tell you how to do something, I could work with you side by side and pair and get a better job. So we saw with Emma's work earlier on, working individually, don't get as much done as working in pairs. So collaborate together. That stance concept stretches across all work, not just across coaching. But a lot of Scrum Masters, because of the time in the job, the experience they have, cannot get themselves through that experience. As a coach, I believe there are 3 tools we accidentally underutilize. Silence, manners, and time. Being polite and respectful, giving people space to talk, both physically, via silence, giving them time to try things, time to experiment, to fall over, to scrape their knees, times to be wrong, times to be right and embed it, rather than just tell, mother. As a Scrum Master, as a coach, as a manager. If you never do Agile again, I would say those 3 things would take me quite far. Respectfulness, silence, giving them space to take ownership, and giving them time to try things for themselves. And so that's why, for me, the key of Scrum is time. Oh God, one second. Better tell Nigel that. Sorry to interrupt, Nigel, but I thought I'd better. I've travelled back through time to give you some advice. You were going to leave the Key of Scrum to the end, and that's not a good idea. They would have worked it out by then and got a bit bored, so you should tell them now. The key to Scrum is time. The key to Scrum is time. There you go. Oh, hang on, my presentation is finishing up. Better get back. Catch you later. Well, there's some other stuff I want to cover as well before we finish up. Entropy. Entropy. So the idea of entropy is all things die. The universe is dying, everything's losing energy, and I see entropy all over businesses. I have no evidence for this. The scientists can probably rebut me or provide clarification. But in my own personal experience, it seems to me that organisations show entropy to a more steady state, and the more steady state seems to be hierarchy. So take your foot off the pedal, take the heat out of the system, things decay into a hierarchy, it seems to me. I don't know why, but I see it again and again in companies where they're trying to be agile, they're trying to change things, and things are going well, and the minute they took the foot off the gas, things accidentally decay, and all of a sudden they've got management structures back and teams squished at the bottom. So be aware of that. I'm not sure things decay with time. We need to keep adding energy to the system. But time heals all wounds. So Dan was here earlier on. He's been involved with the Scrum.org guys doing that PSK thing, you know, Scrum and Kanban working together at last. I know a lot of people are sniffy about it. Hell, I'm a bit sniffy about it. But the idea of Scrum and Kanban not being enemies is a really important concept. You know, the idea is and, not or. It's a fool's choice thinking of them as like evil or competing. Are you doing Scrum or are you doing Kanban? I think most good implementations I see are blends of both philosophies. You know, I see many Kanban approaches basically evolve their own flavour of Scrum. I see many Scrum approaches minimizing work in progress, visualizing, Kaizening, Muda, Mura, all these things. Their experience to come up with a more lean experience. We shouldn't be exclusive. The idea of Agile is a big tent. It's inclusive. It's diverse. And we have enemies. Iterate, iterate, iterate. Do you know what? I thought it was quite a good Dalek impression, actually. I've never done that before. That was quite good. Iterate. So who are the monstrous enemies in our world? Who are the weird green blobs of evil whacked with killing machines that threaten everything we stand for?
Project managers.
Project managers? Oh, that's so 20th century, you know. If I wanted to be really darkly cynical, I'd say agile coaches. But as I am one, I won't say that. Well, people often say, safe. Have you heard of the scaled agile framework? It's not scaled, it's not agile, and it's not a framework. But apart from those things, you know, but you know what? I've come here not to bury safe, even though it's terrible. Anyone doing safe? Stop! Jesus Christ, stop somehow. But do you know what? It's not evil. And I'll tell you why it's not evil. Because they're trying to make it better. And that's the one bit of respect I have for the scaled agile guys. They put a lot of bad practice out there as if it's good practice or core practice. They are learning, right? They are improving it. They are getting feedback. Look at Safe now compared to where it started. And some of the language is positively, very supervisory and very top down. And now the language is getting a lot better in the experience, right? So for me, that's good. They're getting better, you know. That's brilliant in terms of Agile. That's what we want to see, things improving. From quite a low level, but getting better. Getting better all the time. So I come here not to bury them, but to praise them for that getting better experience. What does the future look like? Let's travel to the future. Ooh, in the future. Wow, TARDIS travelling, there we go. We're in the future now. So what does it look like? What does the future of Scrum Master look like? What do you think? So redundant. I love the idea of us not needing coaches anymore. You know, us being so well-rounded as human beings that we have the intellectual, emotional intelligence that we can engage each other without a referee or support. I think that's quite far away. But the idea of Scrum Master is some sort of process wonk. Someone saying to you, hey, guess what? It's your daily Scrum again today. Really, is it? Yeah, we've been doing this 3 years now. Every day, I never got that bit. That will, of course, that will fade away, fingers crossed. But the idea of having someone there to support you, someone there to nurture you, someone there to care after you pastorally, I think is an idea that may never fade. I like the idea of that, but maybe it won't. Well, our product owners, what are they going to look like? Well, hopefully not proxy BAs, of which that is not a product owner. The clue's in the title, they own the product, there we go. I've been on this journey. I remember some of the first product owners I worked with, and psychopath wouldn't be a bad word for them. Nonsense. But then over the years, these people have become inclusive and engaged and understanding technology. And so we've come so far on that in 15 years. I don't think people have totally appreciated how that's evolved. Some of us may have just got involved in this stuff, but how that engagement with the business has improved for many of us. What about Teams itself? What's the future of Teams?
Slices. One shape or six. Just as the options wrong.
Yes, I think some people think they don't think of us as being like becoming more adaptable as we become more advanced. I think maybe, but I tell you what I've seen a lot of in the last couple of years: co-location. People are discovering the insane concept that if you sit with your colleagues, you tend to work a bit better. Get more done? Well, it depends what get more done means, but get less bad things done. And that's kind of, some of us who have spent the last, when I was at British Telecom with Paul back in 2001, BT was like, yeah, we're going to outsource everything, that's the future. And now even British Telecom's going, oh yeah, well, the outsourcing thing, we're going to bring our call centres back. But the idea of co-location for me is something that is an old thing that is becoming true again. That could be the future. I don't know what the future looks like, but the idea is that things are changing. Do you know about Time Lords? And do you know that they regenerate? Time Lords, I am trying to pretend to be a Time Lord here. I've got a bit of Tom Baker, a bit of Sylvester McCoy here, and a lot of sweat. It's very painful now. I shall be stripping this off in a moment, not with you here, obviously. But Time Lords live like 900 years or something like this. They regenerate every 3 series as the actors get bored. But what's the life cycle of your organisational change? Who here is going agile or something? Or we're going agile in our company. Are we doing that? How long have you been going agile? How long do you expect to be going agile?
Forever.
Yeah. It's like, what's the life cycle of a modern business? That's quite interesting, isn't it? How long do businesses survive these days? That seems to be massively shortening down. I've worked with some agile businesses that have been born, been successful, and died, all while I've been bubbling along the last 10 to 15 years. So the life cycle of businesses is short. Do we want to be changing for 12 years if the business is only around for 10? What's the life cycle of an agile coach in your company? Anyone agile coach or had an agile coach? Not biblically, obviously, but had one like in their company sort of thing. How long were they there for?
Still there.
So how long have they been there for?
18 months.
18 months? Anyone higher than 18 months?
I've been doing this for 2.5 years.
2.5 years. Anything longer than 2.5 years? Anyone less than 18 months? Anyone have like a 6-month coach, a 3-month coach? 6 months, yeah. What about a Scrum Master? What's the life cycle of a Scrum Master in a company? What do you think it should be?
Forever.
You're joking, but I think, seriously, this is my pitch, right? So I put this on LinkedIn and Twitter, right? I spent a lot of time thinking about this. This is my core creed for myself. So I worked on it, I thought about it, so I published it, and it got, as far as I can remember, no retweets and no shares. Not even a like on LinkedIn. And normally you get a like on LinkedIn for just saying, but my acceptance criteria for the completion of the work of Agile, whatever the bloody hell that means, is CEOs, developers and coaches have a cycle time of over 8 years. Why do I want leaders to be there for over 8 years? Because many leaders are there for 2 or 3 and focus on short-term economic gain, short-term shareholder value, and they do things that break the spirit and the back of the company. I've worked all over the world, I've worked with dozens of companies, and I see it every single place. They come in, they break it, short-term blip for long-term loss. They get their bonus and you lose your jobs. And that has to stop in companies. That has to stop. Secondly, developers. We joke about outsourcing. We'll outsource the work to like Kuala Lumpur or something. But that's not great. But a lot of developers here. Some of you may be developers, maybe moving jobs every 18 months, every 2 years. The trouble with that is, who cares about the actual products? If you put a bit of effort in, then you move on. Someone puts a bit of effort in, then you move on. These long-term software products in those companies are going to decay. We talk about technical debt. Well, imagine if you could take out debt and not have to repay it. I know I'm only here 18 months, So I'll buy a big lump of money from the bank, I'll spend it on hovercraft and Doctor Who costumes, and then I will run away. Ouch. So how can we encourage people to stay in company, to stay there? But coaches. I'm a believer that coaching is a long-term endeavour, not a short-term endeavour. Coaching is something that you don't stop. Coaching is not a remedial act, I do not know, now I know. Coaching is helping you be better as a human being, as a professional for a long time. Jamie Murray, is that his name? Tennis player? Andy Murray. Jamie's his brother, isn't it?
Yeah.
His slightly taller, better looking brother, not my opinion. But, good legs. But the idea of Andy Murray, he's got a tennis coach. Why? What? But he knows tennis. He doesn't need, I think he used to have Ivan Lendl recently, didn't he, till recently. Ivan Lendl wasn't teaching him tennis. He wasn't like, hey, Andy, try the backhand. and Andy's like, oh, this is how I'm going to win Wimbledon. It's going to be amazing. The back of the racket. No, he knows tennis. It's having someone he can bounce ideas off. It's having someone he respects he can bounce ideas off. Someone he feels like has weight he can bounce ideas off of. That's the idea. That's why I see management going in organisations. They seem to be kicking and screaming going there. But that's something sticky. Maybe agile coaching will die, and I'll be fine with that. But coaching as a concept, I think, needs to live and breathe in many companies, and we just don't do that enough. Even the doctor moves with the times. So, you know, here I am, an old, white, fat man, telling you stuff. I imagine I'm quite red-faced now because of the coat. I believe the left wing call this gammon, I believe. Well, I feel more like a nicely hog roast, actually. But the idea is, you know, diversity helps. Scrum will keep changing. Agile will move with the times, you know. As a Scrum Master, you're a Time Lord. You know, understand that teams need different things at different times. Different engagement, different approaches, different techniques, different practices. Understand they need time to learn, space to try new things. They need time to fail and get back up. Understand that techniques decay over time, right? Entropy, and they grow over time. People grow into techniques as well as falling out of them. You may have heard of the no estimates movement that I'm quite a fan of. The idea of stopping, pointing and measuring and chop it up into small bits. A lot of new teams could not do that if their lives depended on it, but if you're getting quite good, that may suddenly become an option for you. You know, Scrum has changed. Scrum has changed. It's not some fixed thing. It has changed and it will change again. It will evolve as we evolve in our industries. The same thing with the entire Agile movement. Remember, the entire manifesto. People say, oh, the Agile manifesto, and some people online go, well, I think you'll find it's not the Agile manifesto, it's the manifesto of Agile software development. The manifesto itself is not Agile. Ha 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 ha. And I'll say, thanks for that, but shut up, because the first line says, we are uncovering better ways. So the manifesto is flexible, because it talks about how we are uncovering better ways of developing this stuff by helping to do it and helping others to do it. Scrum's the TARDIS, Agile's the universe as a metaphor. Scrum's just a mechanism to help you journey through that Agile space. Use that to help you find new, weird and wonderful words for you. I think that would be cool and that would be rather nice. I told Tom Peters, a famous guy online, he tweeted this the other day, so I copied it. Speed is everything in 2018. Total bullshit. Relationships take time. Recruiting allies to your cause takes time. Reading and studying takes time. Practice and preparation takes time. Management by walking around takes time. Thoughtfulness, small gestures, the little things take time. The last 10%, that little thing that takes it over the edge, takes time. Excellent takes time. So as a Scrum Lord, Time Lord, we've got to find this space and help teams build it in our worlds. The key of Scrum is time, as I told past Nigel earlier on. You know, I'm actually probably lying. I'll probably say one of the keys of Scrum is time. There are a few other keys, I think, such as yourselves, people, uncertainty, etc. But I think we'll leave that for another episode. What happens in the episode of Doctor Who? The screech! And we've reached the end. Thank you very much for listening. I don't know if I overrun or underrun.